Reviews. I am your host, Damien, and this is your one-stop shop for background noise and horror-related content, and analysis. If you are new here, I'll explain the rules nice and easy and simple for you. On this channel, we don't really do normal cleanly analysis. Instead, rather, we use a 4-stage ranking system after I discuss, pick apart, and make connections. First off, 1. The effort box. I rank said media by how much effort I thought the creators put into it. This can mean literary-wise, actual effort, and the overall passion put into the project. 2. The quality box. I rank said media by the quality, time, planning, and accuracy within the circumstances of the media. 3. The lore box. I rank said media by how interesting the topic is to me personally, emphasis on personally, how much of a chokehold the story has me in, and I also base this off how well certain characters and relationships are written. I'm looking for passion, authenticity, and something that will hook me. 4. Last and foremost, the scare factor. Ooh. I rank a certain number out of 10 Beatles, yes, Beatles, for how much the media legitimately startled me, made me paranoid, or frightened. That's the system we use. And now that you're aware of how things work during these videos, we can quickly mention the recent suggestions I have received. Thank you all so much for the suggestions, and I will be sure to check them out as soon as I possibly can. But today's video was not recommended by a viewer, but rather of my own volition to talk about a serious writing problem that's apparent in the series CatGhost's. But what is CatGhost's?
Look at him, sleeping like a baby.
Yeah, like a fat, little baby.
Like a little, fat, ugly baby.
Like a fat, ugly, little abandoned baby.
Because the baby was so fat and ugly, no one would ever love him.
Gideon!
Oh, jeez. Oh, awesome. It's you two. What do you want?
CatGhost's is an old YouTube web series, originally joining the platform on June 10th, 2017, with ARG-themed horror elements, which is story and secret-wise, and it can be found by the account, well, CatGhost's. That's its name. It was created by Chris Patrick and Alexis Ruiz, who had also worked on The Bedfellows, another series that is entirely irrelevant to this. The most recent video being December 6, 2019, while the latest was actually June 15, 2017. Coincidentally, 5 days after the account was made. And it has 13 episodes in total. Its base plot is surrounded around 3 anthropomorphic creatures that deal with strange and even supernatural occurrences. How scary. And through various means, you find out gradually about what truly happened to the trio through the individual episodes, the cryptic games related to the certain episodes that accompanied the rise of the series as a whole. But it is important to note that the first 3 episodes of the series, that being CatGhost's 1, Happy Birthday, CatGhost's 2, Knock, and CatGhost's 3, Window, were made before the trio's full story had not been figured out, and the personalities they had during those 3 episodes were not as fleshed out entirely. And as much as I would like to immediately tell you to go support the series despite its old age, that is not the point of this video, and I'm not doing a full analysis like I did in my previous upload. CatGhost's had some very interesting ideas, episodes, and themes. Yes, when I was younger, I truly enjoyed the art style, and the whole shebang of it. Oh, really? I was a top fan of this series as I grew up with it. It came less important day by day until I had been way older like I am now. It was a great series with decent voice actors and a solid cast. But as I matured over the years and learned that the real world wasn't as kind as previously thought, and I've learned a lot about the hate and violence groups can enact against others. And as I revisit it now, I will be honest, it does not feel the same as it used to. and for various reasons. And everything having to do with the lack of research. I won't sit here and explain every single detail of the story. You can search up the wiki just fine if you would like to delve deeper than I did here, but my focus is not on analyzing the story. It's actually about unintentional harmful writing that somehow managed to be both misogynistic and disrespectful towards the women of the Salem witch trials, the societal impact witch hysteria had all around the globe, while juggling heavily stereotypical pan-indigenous tropes and using a native folklore witch creature that is locked behind Navajo culture for an antagonist that is constant and prevalent throughout the entire series. Hooray! Now, let's start off with Elon. Elon's death in the series is implied with her being burned at the stake in Party Country, shown by her burned red and grotesque body shown in CatGhost's 1, Birthday. But the reason is actually more apparent when you connect the dots of her and Nara's odd supernatural abilities and magic they play around with on screen together. It is implied that a character merely called the programmer who had made Party Country is stated to be from Virginia, and based his own game, Party Country, off of Virginian folklore, which obviously is already setting the story in a real place, which you need to be very careful with, considering Elon and Nora are witches during this time, and implied to be when witch hysteria ran rampant and violently towards innocent groups of women, white, native, and black alike. While not everyone went through the same struggles, there is no denying during this time period things were not good for people who wanted religious freedom, beliefs, and the right to choose, along with women and minorities of every sort. And just listen up, I won't sugarcoat it. Do you realize how wild it is for a woman to be burned at the stake in Virginia? Or even burned at all in any place of America for that matter? Supported by my sources, during the Salem witch trials, and generally during witch panic, in America there was zero recorded evidence of them burning witches. And this is actually just a pop culture myth, when really accused witches in the Americas were more likely drowned or hanged publicly, or rarely pressed to death, and the pressed to death was just a dude. So, there ain't no burning. And here's the facts behind the burning of witches. This was mainly done in European countries. And what people do not want to hear or mention is that death by burning was usually almost always a racial hate crime. There is a lot of documented proof way back when surrounding the topics of black people and Native Americans alike being burned alive. So, not only is Elon's death inaccurate to her character, plot, and location, it's simultaneously erasing actual historical facts and movifying it. And yeah, I'll give them some leeway and say it was unintentional, or maybe they just didn't know. But it's still misinterpreting real-world harm through poorly researched fiction telling. And this also leads to a similar problem within Nara's character itself. Because this is genuinely where my problem with the writing goes from, oh, it's just inaccurate, it's not a big deal, to, oh, wow, you somehow managed to front flip your way into a racist trope. You could have avoided this. Nara is only ever implied, yes, implied, in canon to be Native American, which can force her into this pan-indigenous trope. And, if you don't know what that is, it is a philosophy that promotes that all distinct indigenous groups should live in harmony, unity, and share cultural revitalization. And while it sounds cute on the surface, it isn't. It risks suppressing different cultures, lives, and history into one spot. And it is also risking homogenizing just a whole bunch of people. It's deeply rooted in racism and its allying prejudice and fueled by native violence and genocide. When you refuse to give a character something to latch onto, a culture, a place, a person, you risk making that character a repeating empty shell that echoes indigenous suppression and suffering, and are furthering the harmful view of indigenous women realistically and in fiction. And I will state, I'm not saying this to speak out over native voices. Suggestions are always appreciated, and I am willing to listen. But I am sure in my ability to say that this is a problem that nobody wanted to talk about or address, because mainly the topic was too heavy for big channels. And sometimes it just has to deal with the legal issues. They can't speak about stuff like this. But I can. And I'm gonna do it anyways. But back on topic. The worst part truly is how lackluster the writing was. Canonically, Nara is kidnapped during her human life as an infant by her mother Bethany. It is heavily implied that Bethany and Nara's father, Gideon, were white folk. And this just might be me overshooting, but I think that type of backstory, considering real-life harm and colonism, is not very realistic. And it even feels like they're kind of dumbing down how colonization actually worked. And how indigenous children, were forced into white religious schools, into white households, and, displaced from their families and community, all because of prejudice. Then the narrative has the audacity to imply that she's evil, said by the character Key directly. Nara was around 13 to 14 around her time of death, so deadline, this is just villainizing her and erasing her agency as a person. And also just reducing her to Elon's native-coded, eager witch apprentice. And the whole plot with Bethany and Gideon, it was poorly researched, written, and based off of incredibly flawed racist stereotypes. And somehow, in some way, you managed to turn a traumatized child into a villain and never clarified whatsoever. Good job. And also, considering if Narla was truly Native American-like implied, realistically, they would not have drowned her. And it could have and would have been worse than you've ever imagined. Again, looping back around to the point that indigenous people and black people suffered heinously. And that's literally the lightest way I can put it, because I can't put into words how bad it was. It was without excuse when colonizers decided that they weren't enough based off of appearance and what they believed in. And let's get started on the antagonist of this whole fucking thing, which by far is the most disrespectful choice I have ever seen for a horror series antagonist, considering that the creators themselves are not indigenous, and the fact that they never had the goddamn right to even be touching this topic. Because I don't know who needs to hear this, but skinwalkers are a culturally restricted Navajo myth. Culturally restricted. Do you know what that means? If you consider maybe you may or may not be in your right to comment or create something about these types of topics, please trust that instinct and learn. They do not exist for you to use them as scary horror series antagonists. Ooh, it's a real concept with real people's culture behind it. You do not depict, discuss, or use it for entertainment, period. And my big point here specifically is that this problem mixed with Nara's broken-ass narrative, it becomes exceedingly obvious no actual research was ever done. Instead, just based off of loose, harmful, and generalizing stereotypes against indigenous folk, built on stereotypes, and I will say it 100 times more. Solely based off of loose assumptions and the inane lack of cultural awareness and the lack of respect. And for a series like this, it's embarrassing, uncomfortable, and disappointing all at once for something that could have been so strong if done correctly. Alright, let's talk about how to actually write Native characters respectfully, because clearly some people need a guidebook stapled in between their eyes to figure it out. And it's not going to be made up, just be respectful and pure of heart while writing them. Baloney. I mean actual, digestible, helpful information when it comes to playing your cards safe with representing indigenous cultures and its people. For starters, you do not get to make anything up, you do not get to wing it, and you do not treat them like a costume, tragic backstory, or exotic animal. So what do? Well, here's how. Do actual f***ing research. No, TikTok is not a research platform before anybody starts asking. Yes, you can learn from Native people's experiences there, which is a positive attribute of that. But but please use Google and base your stance on actual unbiased documented history. Fact-check your sources. For example, you can use cultural centers, proven academic sources and institutions, native historians, and tribal websites are all things you can look into when researching about certain cultures within multiple of many indigenous communities. Write them as something specific. Do not compress all indigenous communities in one monolith. Keep it accurate. Avoid using sacred naming traditions. Please, 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 please. Research the language they speak first-handedly. Give them family, agency, aspirations like you would any other person. Avoid using over-the-top names to avoid falling into the insanely controversial trope of the noble savage category. Give them a worldview. Because when you don't, you're opening the door waiting for an accident to happen. Do not use ceremonial names, clan names, sacred names, names you find on any native baby name website unless you are positive that is a rather common name and is accurate to your character, without being over-extravagantly mocking. And for the love of God, do not make up names from scratch. Pick something neutral or ask somebody who knows. And speaking of that, let me rephrase my point. Ask people who actually know what they're talking about. The internet exists for a reason. There are people who are beloved members of indigenous communities who are more than happy to try and guide you towards the right path. I believe that if you stop, think, and worry about what your character could be interpreted as, then at least you care on some degree, rather than just rushing in unprepared, and possibly affecting real people with it. Critique is your friend, even when it sounds mean. Promise. And make sure you do understand the pain, horror, and monstrosities these communities were put through. You don't have to listen to every single horrible thing that was done to them and traumatize yourself when you are ready and willing. But you need to understand the context and how they're still here today, even through forced assimilation and genocide. But also, recognize the beauty and importance of them and their worlds without overstepping. Keep a healthy mind and eye out for this kind of stuff. Alright, let's wrap this up with the ranking. The final part where everything I've talked about collapses into those 4 numbered slots. Effort is a 2.2 out of 10. And this is me being generous. Points were deducted for the complete lack of research, the unintentional misogyny and the unintentional racism, the harmful tropes, and the overall disregard for real people's stories. The only reason it isn't a 0 is because, yes, it was somebody's passion project, and it may be a prized creation, and I would never intrude on that special relationship between an artist and their craft. But passion does not excuse willful ignorance. Quality, it's a 4.1 out of 10. There were ideas. There was potential. There were moments that could have been something salvageable, but the execution, an entirely different ballpark there, buddy. Oh my. The writing, you already know. Do not play with me right now. It drags everything down because they didn't take the time to be competent. Lore, 1.6 out of 10. Inaccurate, built on stereotypes, misunderstandings, and misused cultural concepts. It all circles back to the fact that no research was done. Point blank. Scare factor, 1.3 out of 10. This scared me maybe twice when I was like 10, sure. But it's lacking thematically for a series with horror elements. Now kids.
Yes!
What have we learned? Do your research. Be respectful yet maintain your distance. Use personal, professional, and social sources, and always listen for tips on how to improve your character straight from native mouths. And most importantly, be aware. This has been fun, folks, but I better scurry off back in my dark rat hole again. Signing off, your host Damien. Peace out, Hivemind.